Let's get back to East Africa's largest economy, where the audit firm Deloitte has now been drawn in to the ongoing hunt of individuals and entities suspected to be responsible for the turmoil at Chase Bank and National Bank. Kenya's Directorate of Criminal Investigations, or at least the man who heads that unit, says that Deloitte, which is the external auditor of these troubled entities, has been included on the list of those under investigation. And officials from that company will be required to record statements. Deloitte, however, says it is confident of executing its professional responsibilities and is in compliance with existing rules and standards that define its mandate. Police officers says 3 suspected officials who were questioned alongside the acting CFO of National Bank, Wyclife Kivunira, recorded statements on the sudden upsurge in bad loans at the bank. Let's dig deeper into the role of auditors, if they had any, in this particular crisis. Kelly Marungi from Lattice Consulting, a Nairobi-based financial advisory firm, is in studio with me tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Rama.
Are we being unfair in lighting a fire under auditors?
To be honest, I think we have to look at this through a pragmatic lens. And the first place to start is to look at the role of an auditor in an organization. And generally, when an auditor does the annual audit, they're looking to do 2 things. The first thing is to confirm that the accounts of the organization are prepared according to the accounting principles and that the reports are prepared according to the International Financial Reporting Standards.
IFRS.
IFRS, yes.
Yeah.
And the second one is to see whether the accounts of the organization represent a true and fair view of the organization. And I think that's where the auditor's criticism is coming from. And yes, it's valid to ask, did the accounts present a true and valid view of the businesses under fire? Not quite. But then the other catch is that the auditor does his or her job depending on what the management puts in front of them.
So essentially, the two, as I see, there are 2 main problems here. One, the cycle in which auditing is done, because it's essentially an end-of-year process to a large extent.
Yeah.
And 2, the fact that managers essentially have to provide this information to auditors, and they can, and in some cases, at least in these 2 instances, clearly they lied to their auditors.
Yes, so managers can conceal information from the auditors, and auditors cannot do anything about that. They do some third-party confirmations, but like what we're seeing with the banks, really, there was nothing the auditors could have done to ascertain the information beyond what management provided. They could have escalated their concerns to the board, but again, it doesn't put them on the line when the bank goes under.
I guess a question a lot of people will be asking in the wake of what's happened at Chase Bank and National Bank is, if managers are going to lie to auditors, how do they do it? What are the sort of accounting tricks that come into play in something like this?
I think basically it's the accounting principles that we use leave a lot of leeway for management insofar as to how they treat certain items. So for example, what we saw with Chase Bank, some of the loans to related parties were classified as other assets. Now, depending on how you look at it, that was right, that was wrong. But then when you go further and look at banking regulations, you realize that there was a level of concealment aided by management. And this is where we say corporate governance comes in. So we have the regulators actually, CMA and the Central Bank of Kenya. Then we have the board, which is appointed by shareholders to manage the business, and the board appoints management. So I feel that there has to be different levels of concealment for it to carry through. Because through the audit, auditors usually do a management letter, which is presented to the board audit committee and to the board. So if there were issues around the accounting, those should come out at that stage.
So essentially, we should also be lighting a fire under bank boards in Kenya, because clearly, at least in the case of these 2 banks, their respective boards didn't do their jobs properly.
Yes, whenever there's mismanagement, I think the people to look at is the board of directors.
Would it help if these management letters were made directly available as well to shareholders? Because the argument, here's where I'm coming from. If as a shareholder, I've appointed a board that, in this instance, if I have shares in National Bank, for example, that is clearly not doing its job, I as a shareholder will not necessarily have the information I need to put them on the spot until it's too late. If we make those audit letters, the management letters from the auditors available, would it help to shortcut that problem, to nip it in the bud?
So I feel there's a school of thought that says it would, but I feel like it would create a lot of heat and no light. Because management letters are technical in nature. They are meant to be read and interpreted through the lens of the technicalities of accounting and the aspects of the business that an ordinary shareholder may not understand.
So that's where we'll have all these arguments about whether or not to classify these loans as this particular kind of asset or not.
Yes.
Right.
So it's a board issue, I think. But I think where there has been repeated issues coming up in the management letters over the years, there should be a way to escalate, even if not to the board, to the shareholders, at least to the regulators, to flag these as issues.
Right, we'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much for shedding more light than heat.
Thank you for having me, Rama.
We really appreciate it. That's Kelly Murungi there, of course, from Lasses Consulting.